the measurability component is sort of a farce. And you have to move into this much more measure the brand component that is a little bit more of what I would put in the old school camp. I think they have lots to learn from us. We have lots to learn from them. And somewhere in between is what we're trying to marry and create here.
I'm Greg Wise, and this is Built for Brand. In this episode, we're talking to Cameron Bush, VP of Digital Transformation at Meijer. Cameron will share his journey from focusing solely on digital marketing to embracing the power of things like traditional marketing and out-of-home advertising. And as a D2C brand marketer, Cameron will discuss the challenges he's faced with the digital-first approach, why he believes in out-of-home as a critical piece of the puzzle for modern brands, and we're excited to dive in. But before we do, because Cam, I know you're chomping at the bit, we do have a nice little segment here called Beyond the Billboard Moment. So before we get into the meat of things, our producers have, this is all new to you and I, but we start every episode and we look at what the producers have found in the wild. They've found some sort of out-of-home activation and you and I are going to react to it. We both have links and we're both going to click on it right now. I'm going to let you react first.
Yeah, I feel like this is what NFL players on Sunday must feel when they're mic'd up. I feel like I got to say something poignant and interesting,
right?
Without sounding like Russell Wilson. I'm going to go so far as to say I love this.
Yeah.
Primarily because it changes. I guess it lights up when you're above it, so it gives you an idea. I'm a reader of The Economist. I think Economist readers would find this very interesting, and I think Economist not readers would, A, probably want to get their picture taken, and B, they're probably going to Google it because it looks pretty neat, and they're going to discover if they want to be a reader or not. I'm going to give this an A. I think any of the ones that are like experiential in any way, and I know that we talked about this back in the HexClad days of like, is there anything that we could do to like gamify engagement here? And I think we're seeing it in real time on this Economist one. A+, well done.
So A+, okay. Cam, a little bit of a rookie score, but I like it. So I do know of this. I had not seen this previously, but I have seen this ad previously. Didn't know that the producer was going to pull it. I love this on so many levels. So this thing got a ton of earned media. Not that The Economist wasn't on the map prior to this, but it really went gangbusters when they did this.
Where is it? I feel like that's got to influence the score. London? Okay.
This is London.
Home turf.
This is London, a street level activation, which I love because it screams engagement. It's the simplicity of it is like first and foremost what I love, because out of home is so hard on the creative side, especially if you've never designed creative for out of home. Forget the experiential part of it. Just the simple fact that it is, in fact, simple is everything. Like it says more because it doesn't say anything. And that's honestly what I love about this. In contrast, you might see billboards with tons of words and you're like, I don't even know what brand is behind this. But just then also the simple fact that they are gamifying it, they're doing engagement, an embellishment, or an extension in this case, right? Makes it all that much better. This has been like now like a famous campaign.
I can see this one popping up. I'm actually surprised I've never seen this before. The only reason I might take the plus off is because I'm pretty sure London probably has the biggest density of Economist subscribers already. Like it is kind of a London rag. It's their Wall Street Journal, more or less.
Fair.
I guess it's a little bit more like opinion based than the front page of a paper is, but I think it's awesome and like definitely does like put you on that discovery quest if you don't know what it is. But also if you do know what it is, you're kind of like,
yep,
cool, Economist.
It takes the traditional in a non-traditional way. So I love it. Producers did a great job of that one. All right, let's dive into it, Cam. It's good to have you.
Sounds good. Great to be here.
For the folks listening, just give a high-level overview. Like, who are you? Tell me about yourself and Meijer.
All righty. I'm Cam Bush, VP of Digital Transformation at Meijer. Most people would call that a VP of digital, but it's transformation here because they are a 60 plus year old legacy retail based portfolio company, all cookware companies. Our founder, he was the man in cookware for a very long time. One could say still is an inventor at heart, and really came up with a lot of the technology that we see in cookware today that has been, branded every which way over time. So here it's a lot about moving from retail into D2C. Previously, I was at HexClad, which was all about D2C, and we really founded on D2C first principles. So trying to take that from somewhere a bit older and a bit older school with slightly different distribution and just kind of the way that the P&L actually operates, and bringing the digital first that we had at HexClad and kind of trying to apply it here and take the components of new and old that really work well. And I think this pod is kind of an interesting place to chat about it because there has been a lot of that post D2C discovery of, and even in this Economist ad of that's brand to me. But brand and performance are so often segmented, and they don't have to be. They are part and parcel if done correctly. And one cannot spite the other in a lot of the ways that we're going about it. But yeah, we've got 7 cookware brands in varying levels of digital first versus wholesale first versus even Amazon first. So there's a lot of breadth here to kind of chew on.
Yeah. Well, you did mention something that's a little bit new school and then married with the old, which is bringing that digital first approach to Meijer. Tell me about that. And then tell me, you also mentioned digital, the new school plus old school, and that's sort of brand plus performance. Tell us a little bit about that, why you believe in it.
I think the digital only approach was sort of, at least for me, born of the late 2015 to 2020 era of you could build this whole business on Facebook and you can measure every single touch point and you can trust all of this attribution. And if your margins are good, you can scale to break even and it'll all work out. And I think where somewhere like Meyer differentiates from that is, when that measurement doesn't exist in its precise fashion, in attributable fashion, in predictable fashion, how are they different? If I know that digital can drive to my site and be effective, well, how come digital can't drive to Walmart and be effective? And then in the same vein, if all of these things worked for Walmart, why wouldn't they also work for digital? And I think it's a maturity level of, you can be a master of, each little camp. When you're digital first, you're really all about your paid media channels, about the agility of your dollars, especially in the early days, even 17 to 23. You're day trading, you're surfing budgets, your dollars in, dollars out is what you're always thinking of. And I think even at HexClad and in a digital first place, over time, you start to graduate out of those camps and say, I'm not sure that I can trust that attribution for better or for worse. Meta might under-attribute. YouTube might under-attribute. TV certainly will. Google might over-attribute. AppLovin might over-attribute. Who knows? But when you kind of get to the top of that mountain of having 5 to 10 majorly scaled channels across and tactics for each, you do start to realize that the measurability component is sort of a farce. And you have to move into this much more measure the brand component that is a little bit more of what I would put in the old school camp. I think they have lots to learn from us. We have lots to learn from them. And somewhere in between is what we're trying to marry and create here of how effective is retail media? Can we put a billboard out and expect it to waterfall into D2C and into the local stores? And that was really a lot of what, we talked about in the activation that we did for HexClad of, where are our customers? And it's a good activity to do. Even in some of my consulting days, writing a CTV ad or making a billboard was an activity more than it was about the content or if you even produced the commercial or ran it, because it forces you to elevator pitch your brand in a higher funnel way. It forces you to gamify that engagement, to make people interested, to begin discovery. And I think the longer that I'm in it, I'm like, oh no, I'm becoming a brand marketer. But at the end of the day, a brand marketer with a precise, performance brain, it's just a marketer. And it's kind of where we all really need to go.
Yeah. That combination makes a marketer a killer, honestly. Like the combination of being able to do, call it more of a performance oriented brand, like having a performance oriented brand perspective. And it's funny that you call it an activity. I think that's so good because it is a forcing function to think through how do I describe my brand or an offer in 6 words or less.
And how do I visualize it? What's the one image? And with The Economist, it's like, what do we want people to think and feel about our brand? And you don't need to put your name in huge script if the idea is very clear. And in this case, the idea is the idea. And it's The Economist turns my brain on. And that's, as you walk past, you're probably starting to think about it. And that's that little earworm of discovery that like good creative can make. And good creative can come from brand or it can come from performance. It doesn't matter. And the more you try to separate it, really the less effective you'll get.
I want to dig in a little bit to what you talked about in terms of that sort of like 2015 to 2020, 2023 playbook, right? Like very heavy meta. It's interesting. This is not about me, but I'll make this about me for 30 seconds. I was in the HubSpot ecosystem for 7+ years, right? And then, fast paced, all inbound marketing, everything was digital, modern, progressive. I go into commercial real estate. It's like going back in time. And when I re-entered the marketing space, if you will, I remember saying to someone, when did marketing become a finance position? The creativity, all those things that you sort of knew and grew up thinking marketing was, or at least, I'm a little bit older, things I studied in college, right? Creativity, ideas, big ideas, sitting around a boardroom thinking about what the next campaign might be. I was like, hey, why isn't marketing just under finance now? Because it is like day trading. Now, a lot of that still works. But what we're hearing and seeing from a lot of brands and marketers is that it's not working like it used to, or incremental dollars put into those channels don't yield the results that it used to. Thus, new channels, AKA things like brand and out of home. Tell me your perspective on all of that a little bit.
There's a predictability that comes from day trading, but there's a lot of assumption as well. One is that these are incremental dollars, even at the lower value. And at the lower end, I think it starts mostly from the fact that you have one distribution channel and one way of generating traffic. And when I generate more traffic, I'm making more money. And that created a little bit of a heuristic that might be problematic now because one, the cost of traffic scales and CVR generally does not. And the ability to measure how that cost of traffic is scaling is typically based on whatever date window you're pulling. And as we know, if you're potentially a fan of basketball, LeBron James shoots 23, 7, and 7 every single night on average. He's never shot 23, 7, and 7. So your 2x ROAS is a 4x for the first dollar, 3x for the next, and 1x for the next three. And choosing to scale on a 2x because that works is not quite that simple. And if you throw in windows, timeframes, sales cycles, whatever, if you saw me on a billboard and you saw me on Facebook and then you ultimately came through in Google and converted there, I can't see that. And that day trading component, one, because that cost of traffic has gone up so much, especially on the meta side. I mean, we were looking at $4 CPMs. It was awesome. It was really easy to scale that traffic and optimize back down and you were okay. But now it's like if I've got a $20, $30 CPM and a $50 product, I need to have a pretty excellent CTR, CVR in order to afford those metrics. And I really need to know, is this the one that's actually generating it? Because I'm also testing on all these other channels. And they're also telling me that I've got a great average. And that gets into a really hairy spot when you need scale because it becomes unpredictable. And the finance side of it is like, well, you're at a 4x on every dollar you spend $5 more and we'll make $20. And it's like, well, maybe, but it doesn't totally work like that. And when you have to service goals, revenue goals, surely, and when those become really important, let's say when tariffs hit and suddenly you have 10% less to deal with, or God forbid, 20 to 30% less to deal with if you've got a lot of steel and aluminum in your product, or now copper, which we also have, you really need to be able to hit that predictability, because if I tell you my budget was this and we can do this, and then our costs change, I need to tell you what half of that budget can do as well. And up or down, the scaling is not a given. You got a week-long outage, you've got election year, CPMs go up, whatever it is, it's really tough. And I think in both sides, creative and attention have always been the metric. And it's just the cost of creative and attention that has, and the democratization of where you can get it, that has changed. And really where old school and new school, like kind of where I see the rub is in new school is about execution. Old school is about the idea. And where I think performance marketing brains get frustrated with brands is they're like, oh, we just need more awareness. And it's like, duh, come on. And it's like, well, we need awareness of a great idea. Duh. But what we're sort of grappling with is, what we need is execution. And execution of a good idea requires you to know how these ideas get deployed. It means, is this a view content campaign? Is this a billboard? Where is this billboard? Is this, going to be based on a CPA goal? Is this going to be top of funnel? Is it too middle of funnel? What channel are we putting it out on? There's a lot of unknowns that come out of a good idea that growth teams, performance teams generally have to go and execute on. And a lot of times I'm like, a great performance team that can come up with great ideas would be fantastic, but they're really limited by that measurability piece.
Yep.
Where they're like, well, the ROAS is bad, but I'm not sure that it's valuable. And it can be paralyzing for them, but then in the opposite side, it can be not paralyzing for throwing really expensive, good ideas executed poorly out, and they're not measurable to impact. And it's a balance.
So tell me about that transition then, because you mentioned HexClad and that's where, we met and you did out of home. But what literally was that transition from digital only, right, to we're going to start doing billboards now? Like, what was the conversation like internally?
Internally, it was a lot about diversification and a lot about brand. And I think that was really where we framed that conversation the first time was, hey, you guys want to have a physical presence, and we don't want to open stores, and we don't want to move into retail. How do we have a physical presence in places that we think are important, that are tastemaking, or that our customers could be, are, should be? And that was sort of the first exercise in idea and execution coming from the performance side, where this was a kind of a brand initiative there, where they wanted to have this physical location and this real top of funnel, person agnostic, audience agnostic opportunity. And the best that we could do before that was probably like, I guess I'll do linear TV. And I'll do linear TV when I can get it on a fire sale. And I wanted way tighter data and measurability on what we were doing. And I think there is a component now that is getting baked in and is talked a lot on other podcasts and industry rags and, D2C Twitter of, brand is a lot more than just the performance of your brand. And getting those ideas out there and having, physical mainstays and being truly top of funnel and okay with the fact that if 1,000 people walk by your billboard, that 500 are going to notice it and not care at all. And maybe aren't in your ICP. And what you're choosing is the location and the place that you want to like put a stake in the ground. And I think we talked about this at the time where, premium to some people might mean New York City and Chicago and A+ inventory in all of those places. But I think where I always went back to, especially with out of home, was the memorability to me of billboards that I either grew up with or that are in my city. I live in Denver now. Frank Azar, the strong arm, guy's famous. I've never used his legal services. I hope I never have to. If I have to use legal services, am I going to call him? Probably not. But we talk about him all the time. And
Right.
it's because he's got 3 billboards right along the highway by my house that makes him feel like a local. He could live in Jupiter, Florida, for all I know. And to me, he's a Denver guy. And that is what we wanted to do with HexClad. And when we were going into our first out of home campaign, it was around Q4. And I wanted a presence, one around the areas that we were going to be in those Costco's. And we were in the road show. So there wasn't a whole lot of guarantee of where we were going to match up. But city wise, we want to be around those areas. But we also want to be where people are shopping. And if people are going to go into the mall in Cherry Creek, in the south of Denver, there's a Williams Sonoma in there. There's a Restoration Hardware in there. It is absolutely packed all of November and December. I was like, that's where I want to be. It's not an A+ location. It's on kind of a weird little part of a pretty busy 4-lane, 35-mile-an-hour street. A little bit better than the highway to me because you get stuck in traffic there all the time. And people are going to have to sit and hold on it. But it's the mindset that those people are in right now is gifting. And I'm probably going to the mall to knock out a list. And whether it's the mom going to the mall that is buying stocking stuffers for the whole family and sees it and is like, wow, that's what I want. I'm going to put that on my list. Hopefully someone gets it for me. Or if it's you going to the mall and you see it and you're like, I don't even have to go inside. I can skip this traffic entirely and just buy this thing and it looks
Right.
awesome. I've seen it on online. I've seen it on TV. I get all kinds of UGC on it, as if a consumer thinks about UGC as UGC. And it's just one of those, like, when you see something in person, it just becomes a little bit more like physically relevant to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an inexplicable thing, but it's kind of like event marketing or, meeting a founder. There's an attachment there, that then spreads beyond like just the relationship between you and the brand. It's the relationship between you, the brand, and the location you're in. And it's just a little stickier.
It's funny because with out of home, I say this all the time. It's the only medium that you can leverage audience, which you can now, right? With a lot of great data, that obviously we use and others where you can pinpoint exactly where your audience lives, works, plays, commutes, etc. So audience plus context. You take a lot of the assumptions out, right? Especially when you're putting that billboard next to or en route to Cherry Creek, right? It's, these folks are literally going there because they're shopping, right? At least the majority of folks are. So it takes a lot of the sort of wasted impressions out of it, especially because it is a broadcast medium. That helps you sort of eliminate or maximize the targeted impressions. When you guys made the shift, tell me this, because other D2C marketers, performance marketers listening, was it that you were comfortable with it? Were there other folks internally that weren't comfortable with it? The context in which I'm asking this question is oftentimes the marketer gets it. Perhaps the C-suite or board level investors, someone doesn't, who is used to refreshing a dashboard. Tell me about your experience there.
Oddly enough, I was that guy.
Okay.
I was the one that was like, I could put this into Facebook instead, and at least I know what I'm going to get out of it. And they were like, take that away, please. Like, we want to do this. Just as this much budget, just come up with the best thing you can. And that was when we really got in the lab and we're kind of like, so how could I measure this? Like, where should I put this? And I pulled a ridiculous analysis of all of our Shopify orders across every zip code, categorized every zip code into rural / unincorporated, 50,000, between 20 and 50,000 suburb. And suburb was very specific to being like around cities, and then 20 to 100,000 of like a C-tier city. And then there was the top 10 cities that we kind of like metroed out and didn't super want to touch. And then there was the kind of in between mid-tier, B-tier city of like 250,000 to 1 million, which, boy, there are a lot more places in the US that are at that than I probably would have thought. And then pulling our sales by population density and getting into these really nitty gritty areas to me that were like, wow, unsurprisingly, but surprisingly from the way that we describe ourselves, we do the best in the suburbs. And like, of course, we're selling, our hero product is a 13-piece set. If you don't live in the suburbs, you're not buying a 13-piece set. Unsurprisingly, New York City was not one of our better markets, but it was by orders. It did really well in orders, but people were getting 1 to 2 pans or a pan in a pot or our extra small set. And it was like, we do dominate in the suburbs and we dominate in these mid affluence suburbs because it's a little expensive,
Mhm.
but it's not too expensive to be like, that's way out of my range. It's expensive enough to quest after. And like that was kind of the anchoring analysis that then was like, okay, now I'm kind of interested. Now this is pretty fun. I want to put this into these places. I do want to be pretty agnostic to the performance here because this is a moment and not something that must be measured. One, because it is not 100% of our budget, but two, it's going into this crazy all out time where people are kind of frenetic and weird in Q4. November and December, people start just buying stuff. It does not matter what company you are going to grow in Q4, period over period at least, assuming you're going on sale. But even if
Yep.
you're not, people are buying. And if you can just hit them in a different way, in a different place, that could be the one thing that breaks the camel's back on whatever piece of creative you put out there. And it is no different than just spraying and praying with creative and meta of this one just rose to the top. We don't know why it's working. I was like, can we do that in a place that we know is primed to have that moment and that we want to grow in this market, that we have some physical mainstays of Costco's and different parts that is in this affluent, mid affluent category, but also can expand up and down. And that's where we want to meet the moment and do it while they're shopping. And that just, hard to say what worked and didn't.
You used a ton of data and like performance data to get comfortable with the idea that you wouldn't necessarily be able to measure a dollar in and a specific dollar out with this new channel, this being out of home and billboards. That's fascinating. And I think it speaks to, it certainly speaks to our approach, right? It's like, hey, let's pick a market or markets that are perhaps undervalued, perhaps where you don't have a lot of penetration, but your audience index is highest for, whatever the case may be, right? And it's different for every business. But that's what it sounds like, is that you just used a ton of data to make yourself comfortable with the fact that you might not have the data.
It's a little bit of my crutch, or potentially blocker, where it's like if I can't measure it, I'm so unsure, and I like making good bets. But
Yeah.
in that discovery process, it started feeling like a better and better bet because you could see also in the data that we are missing out on hitting these
Right.
people, and if this is a way to do it, why not?
And so what were you looking for? Like, tell me a little bit about then during or post campaign in your experience with out of home is for other marketers who, by the way, we never said this is last touch or a bottom of the funnel channel, right? You got to that place, you realized that your team didn't expect that in terms of refreshing dashboards. Great. That's a win. That's how out of home needs to be positioned to folks, especially performance marketers, set the right expectations. So what did you look at? Right? If it wasn't refreshing a dashboard, what was the thing you guys were paying attention to?
Unfortunately, there was a little bit of refreshing a dashboard component going on.
Fair. So tell me about
But
that.
so through all of those zip codes, we selected the ones that we wanted. That's where we put our activations. I think we had like Denver, outside of Chicago,
Yep.
mostly outside of New York proper, or New York City proper, and a little bit more into the Jersey, out of the city commuter area, places we knew people would be spending time that were still in that market, but also had the square footage to support buying a 12-piece set or 13-piece set. I just kept tracking them and we just kept watching, and we pulled the same zip codes for our Costco roadshow sales over that same period and periods after. And it was kind of quick and dirty on the back of the napkin there of like, okay, these did grow in an outsized fashion compared to similar ones at the same time over the next 3 to 6 months. Can I prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt? Did I put it through an MMM? I did not. but it was also one of those good experiences, very similar to like doing our first like Monday Night Football ad,
Sure.
where the most texts I've ever gotten, other than the Super Bowl, on "Wow, you guys are a real brand," was on Monday Night Football and on
Billboards.
actually that train unit from Union Station in Denver, where everybody that I knew in town was like, "Hey, hey, I saw you guys ad on the train. That's really cool. Like Gordon's face is right on the door." And there's a little bit of tire pumping going on that I'm like, okay, it's working. But it was also just a light bit of anecdotal evidence to say this made people stop and think enough so to shoot a text to the one person they know at that brand to say, I saw this with a picture more often than not, especially of that train unit, because I think the train unit is a little bit more of just like, that was cool. It's a
It was
whole
awesome. I
wrap
mean,
train.
it was awesome. It was awesome.
And that was kind of I wouldn't call it the full eureka moment, but that was where I stopped refreshing the dashboard. I was like, I think this made an impact in a meaningful way with a lot of people in the same way that I feel when I don't know, if you've got like a store nearby, a coffee shop, whatever, where the coffee's not that good, but the dude that serves it's the best, and you become a frequenter of that place because it's a good experience. And it's kind of one of those like intangibles that's stewing with people of like, I saw that, I was on that train, I remember it. What a cool like little piece of creative whatever. And it just becomes an earworm when, especially for something like expensive cookware, you don't buy it every day. Same reason we all know the jingles or 5-word phrases that come after Nationwide, Allstate, and State Farm. It's just an earworm. You're only going to be in market for that a few times in your life. And with cookware, if you can make a memorable moment and you're in that consideration set from the get-go, like everybody else has to fight their advertising dollars against you to say, no, we're better. And unless you're in the market for something extremely specific for an extremely specific reason, which for the masses in the US, I don't think there is that. It's generally been what's available, and now what am I being told? When
Yep.
you go out to get new cookware, you want to go with what you know. And if you feel like you know it because it was either local or because you've heard about it and then it was local, there's just a little bit more connection there. And I think that's a lot of what brand is. It's just connection, feeling connected to a brand as a person and as a personality, and something that exists in your world.
Yep.
And if you're just digital, you are missing out on a lot of like activity.
Tell me about that activity, because one thing we talk to marketers about is we're not saying do out of home and don't do everything else. I'm curious, was this incremental budget? Were you taking budget from digital channels? And did you see digital channels perform better? Were they more efficient? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
It was incremental budget. The only way that I could come over the line was making it incremental budget.
Okay.
Because I was like, I'm taking something away from what I can measure and putting it into something I can't. I don't like that at all. But we were performing extremely well. It absolutely, that budget did exist. It wasn't a full-on hardcore bet, but that was really what made me comfortable with it. Is this is just froth on top. We can have fun with this. And I now like the concept. I like where we're going with it, and I think that it can work. Did we see lift? That one is extremely hard to say because Q4, whether it's period over
Yeah.
period or year over year, we were already gunning for 100% year over year in Q4 and probably 300% period over period. So when it got hit with all that budget baked in, do I give it credit? Absolutely. When I tracked that dashboard for as long as I did, was there lift? Absolutely. Can it be, you know, 100% guaranteed that it was driven by? I don't know. But I think that where great brand activations get you is I don't know, but I don't care because I liked it.
But you knew that going in. That's the key right there. And you did the work ahead of time to get yourself comfortable. I got to ask you, is there a brand now that you are obviously switching gears? Is there a brand that you could think of that you're sort of like kind of crushing on right now? I don't ever use the word crushing, by the way, but our producers have asked me to use the word crushing, so I'm using it.
I'll always have an extremely warm and soft spot for HexClad
Yeah.
because you can just see the fingers in that pie like coming through in their creative. Like I think Matt Ducker and like the content that they put out is just absolutely incredible. Like they've got a one of one thing going on, but in the effort of getting away from cookware and just talking about awesome brands. Do you know Malbon,
Yeah.
golf brand?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody doing it better right now.
Hmm.
And they just have their partnerships are incredible. They just did this insane like event activation thing at the Masters. They had the Malbon home and this beautiful like old Georgia plantation house, and they were doing breakfast in there. They were capturing content. They had a bunch of like cool Masters related designs that were coming out. It was all the birds from Georgia. I don't think anybody has hit the partnership and like meet your moment while you're growing kind of thing as well as they have, and like in a disruptor fashion. Because I mean I don't know if you know a ton about it, but like Jason Day is their pro, and the number of times that he's had to like change because his outfit is not like up to the caliber of wherever they're playing. It might only be one, but boy, I read about it 100 times. It's like that's so cool. That's like awesome PR to say like you're kind of this disrupting streetwear fashion in golf brand, and you are just owning it. And they're bringing in people that don't traditionally get put in creative for golf. It's not a bunch of old dudes in khakis. It's everybody.
Love it.
And I think they're doing a really awesome job and like hitting this partnership thing in stride so hard. I just wish they would stay in stock.
There's a little bit of brand that you're talking about there with those
Oh,
guys, you know?
I
That's
I think they were genuinely the onus of like where the brand piece just had me smitten
Yep.
because I just was buying everything that they were coming out with. They partnered with they had a Coca-Cola collab, they had an Adidas collab, they had a Nike collab, they had a Supreme collab, and it was all in the same year. I was like, how are you guys doing this? But every single one, like I'm the classic size of the average man, a medium, and they're always gone. And it's like I've been trained now that I follow up on those emails immediately because they've just got me suckered in. I want to be a Malvin guy.
Well, Malbon sounds like Malbon might be a good fit for some billboards too. Shout out Malbon.
Definitely.
But I do know them. I think they are doing a heck of a job. I used to be not that anyone cares. I used to be a schmedium, and now I'm more of like a large. As I've gotten older with kids. But Kim, as we kind of wrap this up, I do have a question for you. What would you say? What advice would you give to a fellow performance D2C marketer in terms of their journey from performance only to exploring brand, but specifically out of home advertising?
Go through the research process of seeing stuff that you find interesting. I think it was you or Hannah that like pulled a big old deck together that had a bunch of just really well done versions of out of home. It would have contained something like this Economist ad. It had that ramp. There was
Wrecking
like
ball. It was a
wrecking ball. It had
drop down
crushed a
versus-
car, and it was in this really cool spot, and people were taking pictures with it. And I got really like excited and fancified by those, and wanted us to like go crazy on the creative. And then I started having the budget conversation with myself of, oh no. But we got really comfortable with like, let's just do our best in a static ad unit that like lives in your home. So like we want this to be artful creative. We want this to be interesting. We don't want it to be DR. We just want to be showing up in like it's like a LinkedIn photo or like your Instagram profile photo or even just your Instagram feed where like, how do I want to represent myself here and just put a stake in the ground somewhat literally
Yeah.
and put that out into the world. And I think the part of you that wants to measure away and say, this could have done this in Facebook, like one, probably don't do it when you're in that budget position. That is a short-sighted way to be. If you're 50% behind goal and you want to spend incremental, I don't know what to tell you, but I guess don't do something that stresses you out this much. But there's a lot of times where not showing up in real life is limiting you on both sides, and having people that are, seeing you all day every day and then they get hit with your ad is a much better experience. And whether it's TV, CTV, YouTube, whatever, all of those things made Meta work better for us. Events made Meta work better for us. Billboards, I believe, made Meta work better for us. And take a little bit of the old to new and accept that it does still work. Door to door still works. Cutco still exists. Roofers, they make bank. It still works. Live demos in Costco road shows still work. The infomercials still work. Obviously, you need to find those things for your own brand. It's like if we sell only to 15-year-olds, I'm definitely going to be on TikTok. But if we sell to everybody, why not be in real life? Why not? If you're going to do an event, why not do a billboard? Like, what is the difference? And if you think about an event and you can justify that, then think about an out-of-home billboard in the same way and say, this is an opportunity to meet people in real life and to show them what we're all about. Again, to the activity/exercise, it is a good exercise to meet that also with a billboard. And do the same thing. This is your introduction to this rough geography of whoever's driving through here, walking through here, seeing any of this. And also to make your performance brain feel a little better, like make it engagement bait. Make it something somebody takes a picture of and sends to somebody. Make it funny, make it complex, make it cool like this Economist one and thoughtful. But all of these old school things still have validity in the modern world. And while your Meta cost per meal or per eyeball has scaled, like for the most part, these have not. And in a lot of cases have gotten cheaper or have gotten cheaper in comparison while Meta goes up, 20% every single year. There is real alpha in taking what you've known and learned in D2C and applying it to these age-old tactics if you know how to adapt it and if you are giving it the right, frame of mind. And again, on the exercise thing, it is a really good activity to get out of your comfort zone of Meta and hooks and engagement rates and ROAS and put a bet out there. It doesn't have to be enormous to say, like, I think that this can really do something for us, and just frame a test around it. You throw money at Pinterest, you throw money at Snapchat, you throw money at AppLovin and Meta and all these channels, and you're not looking at the one that you drive by every single day on the way to the office. Like, it still works, man. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it.
Man, Cam, that was, I don't think I could really add anything else to that. I'm usually supposed to recap the episode, but that was the best recap I could imagine. I mean, look, one thing that stood out that you've said throughout our time together here is, and just one thing I've observed is, again, how did you sort of get those right expectations before diving into the world of offline and out of home? And you used your performance data-driven experience and expertise to get yourself comfortable with the uncomfortable, because it is, for a lot of these modern marketers, it is, right? It is different. But also, to your point, this is intended to make all the other channels work better in conjunction with everything. The rising tide lifts all boats. That's the mentality. Sounds like you got there. You had success with it. Congrats to you on Meijer and everything you've done up to this point. And look, for folks listening, that's really it for this episode. Really, really enjoyed Cam Bush. Really appreciate your time, man. This has been tremendous. And until next time, I'm Greg Wise, and this is Built for Brand. If you want fresh perspectives on how to connect with your buyers IRL, we've also got a newsletter for that. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks.
Love it. Thanks for having me.